1 year after he had been dethroned at the Rumble in the Jungle, George Foreman was still reeling from his infamous loss to Muhammad Ali. To explain what had happened, Foreman had blamed the ref for counting too quickly. He had supposed his water may have been drugged, and he was livid that the ropes had been set so loose as to allow Ali to lean back out of the way of his punches. But nobody seemed to be listening. In Foreman's own words, he had become depressed beyond recognition, feeling that he had lost what defined him as a man. So, Foreman arranged a comeback fight with Ron Lyle, hoping to prove to the world that he was still the unstoppable Goliath he had once been. But Lyle was no easy opponent. Lyle had learned to box in prison as a youth, while serving time for killing a rival gangster. His sentence ended early after the governor pardoned him for saving the life of a prison guard who was being held hostage. Now a free man, Lyle turned pro at the age of 30, quickly gaining a reputation as a powerful brawler who could hang with the best competition in heavyweight. But as willing as Lyle was to trade blows toe-to-toe, he was also incredibly well-rounded, with one of the most eclectic arsenals of his era. He could employ long guard tactics and hand fight to set up power shots, just like Foreman. But he could also bend at the waist rather than the knees like Frazier. This gave him extra reach for body shots and loaded the shots he threw when he came up from ducking with more power. And believe it or not, he even used a cross guard from time to time. Having so many defensive resources, you may assume that Lyle had a weak chin or pillows for fists, but Lyle had taken Ernie Shaver's best punches, and then knocked Shavers out. What this meant was that when Foreman met Lyle in the ring, the crowd was most likely in for one of the wildest fights ever seen. The round started off with a bang, Lyle lunging in with a huge body shot. Foreman circled away, but Lyle wasn't done making his point. He squared right up to Foreman, hand-fighting with him at mid-range and throwing huge power shots. Although he remained calm on the surface, Foreman was legitimately shocked that Lyle seemed neither scared nor intimidated. But Foreman stuck to the plan, attempting to set up power blows off of his jab. He landed a beautiful lead hook, but not much else. Lyle's plan seemed to be to duck into hard body hooks, but Foreman was able to keep him away, most of the time by controlling his shoulders and arms. But both men were not exactly known for their patience in the ring, and the two eventually entered into a heated exchange. Astonishingly, neither man landed a clean shot. But then, all those body shots that Lyle had thrown throughout the round finally paid off. Instead of going low, Lyle went high. It was a hard shot, and Lyle tried to follow up, but Foreman managed to smother most of his shots, even landing an uppercut set up off a collar tie in retaliation. Still, Lyle was able to bully Foreman around the ring until the bell sounded the end of the round. If Foreman hoped to prove to the world that he was still a fighter to be feared, not merely respected, but feared, Foreman would have to put on a much more impressive performance, starting in the next round. Lyle was even more aggressive in the second, attempting to build on his success from the first. But Foreman did an excellent job circling away and turning Lyle, walking him right into hard shots. Then again, Foreman didn't really throw any other kind, and this was on full display when Foreman landed a huge uppercut, angling inside to counter Lyle's wide rear hook. Now Lyle was shaken, so Foreman upped the aggression to 11, but he had learned his lesson from his fight with Ali. He took his time, setting up his shots off of probing jabs. He also did a great job mixing up his shots to keep Lyle guessing, alternating between overhands and rear hooks. But Lyle put his nuanced guard to good use, rolling with the punches to diffuse much of their power. Still, it might have ended in the second, but luckily for us, and tragically for Foreman, the round ended a minute early due to a timing error. Lyle would have ample time to recover. Both men had now had a big round, each hurting the other badly, but this was only a taste of what was to come. For all of his patience in the second, Foreman went into the third like a raging bull. He seemed willing to take a number of shots in the hopes of landing one big one, and Foreman did take a number of shots, many of which would have knocked out most other heavyweights. But to Foreman's credit, this ridiculous strategy may have actually worked on most other fighters. But Lyle's chin must have been made out of the same indestructible material as Foreman's. But one way or another, Foreman's strategy would force a conclusion. The fourth would be one of the most intense rounds of all time. Early in the fourth, Lyle rolled Foreman's rushed swings, parried his jab, and then expertly timed a beautiful 1-2 in response. Foreman's adamantium chin was cracking, and Lyle knew it. He chipped away again with a beautiful left hook, right uppercut, left hook combination. Foreman tried to back away, but Lyle showcased great lateral movement, cutting off the ring to land a right hook, left hook combo from southpaw. Lyle hit Foreman so hard, he didn't even feel any pain from the punch. He simply fell to the canvas. Foreman realized then and there that there were no more excuses to give. No loose ropes, no drugged water, nothing to blame but Lyle's mule kick of a right hand. But now, Foreman decided that this time would be different. He rose up to his feet without hesitation, not even waiting to see if his head had cleared. Foreman managed to survive, wisely tying up Lyle until he had recovered, and only then did he go back on the offensive. But Lyle was understandably reluctant to give ground after landing a devastating knockdown, and the two began throwing their hardest shots at the exact same time. It's important to note that neither Foreman nor Lyle abandoned their defenses entirely while throwing, as Foreman had done in the third. Both men relied on instincts built over years of training to know when to block and dodge as they threw. But this was still insanely risky for both men. It could only continue for so long until someone went down. It was Lyle who landed first, catching Foreman by tracking his head movement as he tried to slip inside. But Foreman threw a lead hook right back as if nothing had happened. Both men had only partially connected with their left, so both loaded up for a tremendous right. This time, Foreman slipped deep enough offline to dodge the punch and tagged Lyle. But now it was Lyle's turn to act as if nothing had happened, and both men again threw a simultaneous left, which Foreman slipped and Lyle pulled. Put in purely technical terms, both men had run out of to give. They were ready to end this now. Just then, Foreman bit on a right-hand feint, ducking low inside. This gave Lyle all the time he needed to set up his left. It connected, but Foreman ate it and continued throwing, hurling an earth-shattering hook into Lyle's jaw. Lyle tried to fight back through the haze, but Foreman landed again and again and again, and now it was Lyle who toppled to the canvas. Astonishingly, Lyle got up. Foreman again tried to finish with tact, using his jab and pulling down Lyle's guard to create openings. But Lyle did a great job rolling and deflecting Foreman's punches, so Foreman tried angling off to the side to set up new lines of attack. And while this earned him several successful hooks landed in a row, somehow, Lyle was still standing. So, perhaps frustrated, Foreman threw wider and wider. It was then that Lyle decided it was time to fight back. Foreman threw again, but Lyle's tighter hook connected first. So Foreman tried again, and again Lyle intercepted the long punch with the shorter one. For the second time in the round, just when it seemed he was on the brink of victory, Foreman went down. Sitting on the canvas, Foreman thought back to that night in Zaire. He had wondered every day since, if I had given my all, then why didn't I die there? If I'd done everything I could have, why didn't Muhammad Ali have to kill me to beat me? Didn't you vow that you would die before you got counted out again? Foreman willed himself to his feet, and the bell signaled the end of the round. For Big George Foreman, the entire trajectory of the rest of his life would be decided in the next round. Lyle came on strong, battering Foreman with sharp, shearing punches. Foreman pushed him back to mid-range and unloaded some of the most savage blows he had landed so far. But Lyle would not be deterred. A huge uppercut crossed underneath Foreman's jab and almost sent him back to the canvas, but Foreman managed to stumble back into his stance. Lyle hit Foreman with punishing combinations, but Foreman never stopped fighting. Circling, wrestling, jabbing, keeping up constant pressure. Both men were so far past their limit, it seemed impossible they were still standing, but Foreman was driven forward by the ghosts that had followed him since Zaire. Hitting shot after shot, Foreman finally connected with a stunning right that turned Lyle's already unsteady legs into rubber. He backed Lyle up on the ropes, then to the corner. For nearly half a minute, Foreman did not stop throwing. His punches got weaker and weaker, but so did Lyle, who seemed to slouch to the canvas almost in slow motion. The ref counted, but Lyle stayed down. As the ref raised Foreman's hand in victory, Big George felt he had been redeemed, but not because he had won. To quote the man himself, "I was wrong about needing to win the championship again. Having proven that I could get off the mat, the core that made me a whole man reappeared." I've never gotten personal in any of my videos, but I will say, as someone who's going through a crisis right now, working on this breakdown and seeing Foreman's will to keep fighting inspires me to keep fighting, no matter how tough it gets. Foreman did in fact regain his championship 20 years later. If you'd like to hear more about that, you could check out my video that pops up at the end screen. If you'd like to learn more about martial arts yourself, you can check out my books on footwork, power, and defense, linked below. For the modern martial artist, this has been David Christian, wishing you happy training.